So, joining us now is Republican Senator John Kennedy. He will be attending tonight's state dinner. Good to see you as always, Senator. A point of style first. You're going to the dinner tonight, yes? Uh-oh. Has John Kennedy been silenced by CNN? Let me see if I can hear you, sir.
Is that better?
There we go. Were you mouthing answers because you were trying to throw me?
No. I wouldn't do that, Chris.
All right. Well, by the way, it worked really well. I was totally thrown. Let me ask you something. So tonight, you're going to the dinner.
Yes.
The Democratic leadership is not invited. Right move?
No. I would have included, and this is just me. I mean, the president can select his own management style. I would have included more of a cross section. I would have included the media. I think this is about it's about learning from President Macron and thanking him. I want to thank him for standing with us in Syria. I want to thank him, the French people, through the president, for selling Louisiana to the United States in 1803. I love France, but I'd rather be part of us.
And they gave us that really nice statue that used to be emblematic of what we're all about there in the New York harbor. Of course, that's come into a little bit of dispute. The reason I raise this is not to play petty politics, but to deal with big P politics. You've got the French president coming here. He has to know that the president has consensus of common ground behind him. He's going to look around this table. He's going to see only one half of the equation represented. That can't give confidence to him that I know that whatever this president says, he can get done.
I wouldn't have done it that way. The president, let me say it again, he's entitled to pursue his own management style. But I see this as a way to say to France and President Macron, look, we want your advice. We want your advice on Syria. We want your advice on Iran. That's short term. Longer term, we want to know what you think China has planned in terms of its interaction with the West. I would like to talk to him about Russia. I think the Russian people are fine people. I think their leadership is lacking. I'd like to know what we can do to help President Macron with his reforms in France and his reforms with the European Union. And I think it would have sent a better message, just my opinion, if we included a cross-section of Congress. You can't include everybody, but that's Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. And I think the more media exposure we can give to thanking President Macron for standing with us. He didn't have to join us in Syria, but he has. And I'm very, very grateful for that, as I am to the UK.
All right, so we'll see where they come out in terms of negotiating moves with respect to the Iran deal and our presence in Syria. Obviously, you guys should have a lot more to say about that than the French president.
Well, Iran is the most important.
So you think that's the big ticket?
It is. On the one hand, we've got to make a decision about the what I call the nuclear deal. On the other hand, it is clear that Iran, the Ayatollah, not the Iranian people, the Ayatollah is doing everything he can to start mischief. He doesn't care about, he meaning the Ayatollah, he doesn't care about the Syrian people, and he doesn't really care about Assad. I think he wants to establish a beachhead in southern Syria, so it makes it easier to screw with Israel.
Right. But, you know, that was a complication when you did the deal a few years ago also, the U.S. government. It was hard to fold that in, their bad acts abroad, when the central focus is on what they're doing with their plutonium and uranium enrichment and what they're going to use it for. So they kept it out. Now, the allies who signed that agreement didn't really want to fold it in then. So do you think this is going to be about a side deal, or do you think this will be about negotiating an extra layer to the current deal?
Well, I hope it's about the former as opposed, or rather the latter as opposed to the former. But I don't know. I don't want to do anything to allow Iran to proceed again to establish build a nuclear weapon. Having said that, we can't let Iran go unchecked. We can't let it continue its missile research. We can't let it continue its mischief in Yemen. We can't let it continue its mischief in Syria. I mean, basically, the Ayatollah, not the Iranian people, the Ayatollah wants to control the Middle East. He's saddled up with President Putin. I think that what they're doing in Syria is wrong. We could settle the massacre in Syria tomorrow if Iran. Just by sitting down at a table with Assad, with Russia, with Iran, with the United States, with President Macron, and saying, look, we have all these people killed, we have so many people displaced. You know, how do we settle this? I'm not sure that would include, it could include, it shouldn't include, but I try to be realistic about these things, about Assad continuing. He's not the only leader in Syria that could restore Syria. In fact, I think he's probably the least likely to do it. But we need some peace in Syria. Now, that doesn't mean peace at any cost. But I'm just not sure that Iran wants peace. I think they like the idea of us trying to establish themselves. Hezbollah is already there in Lebanon. They're controlled by the Iranians. The Revolutionary Guard is now moving into Syria. I'd like to hear President Macron's thoughts about how we can combat that without totally blowing up the nuclear deal in a way that Iran ends up with a weapon.
I'd like to hear it, too, because we don't hear about it from the U.S. president. There seems to be no plan or policy in place in terms of what you're talking about. So let's see what fruit come on that. Let me ask you about something else. We're talking about the division. Now let's talk about common ground. Privacy and everything we're learning about what not just Facebook, but all these big providers can do with our information. And we all just agree to that big, long contract in the beginning, lawyers or otherwise, because we want to use the app. So you're getting together with Democrats to make a difference that will be better for Americans. How so?
Senator Klobuchar and I have introduced, I think, the only bipartisan bill. It's called the Social Media Privacy Act. It's pretty straightforward. It just says to Facebook and all the other social media platforms, look, when people sign up, you got to tell them what information you're collecting. You've got them in plain English. You've got to give them a chance to opt out. You've got to give them a chance to join up, but opt out later if they want to. You've got to show them their information. You shouldn't have to chase all over hell and half of Georgia to find the way to do it. It ought to be very, very simple and straightforward. And if your data's breached, you've got 72 hours to tell the consumers. What we know now is that the consumers on these social media platforms are getting the short end of nothing. It's all biased in favor of the platforms. I don't want to hurt the platforms. I told Mr. Zuckerberg that. I learned a couple of things in here. I learned that he's very smart. I learned that he is fluent in BS. I learned that he was very well prepared. And I don't mean to denigrate him. He did what his lawyers and handlers told him to do. But now the ball's in his court, and I want to see what he's going to do to deal with the privacy problem and deal with what I call the propaganda problem. I want to thank him. I think yesterday he instructed the Facebook folks to release their censorship policy. It's 27 pages. That's okay. We get to see the whole thing. He's also implemented a way to appeal. If they throw you off Facebook, you have the right to appeal. That's important for the First Amendment. And I know it's hard to get your arms around it, but I just sense that in the past, Mr. Zuckerberg and his team didn't try. Now they're trying. That tells me that maybe he's not just smart, he's got some sense, he sees what's coming, but we'll see.
Well, the powerful often act out of consequence, not conscience. So,
well, that's true, but I want to give him the benefit of the doubt.
No, I hear you, but I'm saying if you come through with regulation that helps create standards, it will always make a difference. We'll see how they react to that. It is good that you're working with the other side. It is good that you're finding common ground. We need more of that. And I've also learned that when you say, I don't mean to denigrate you, it usually surrounds something that can be a pretty nasty hit. Being fluent in BS or calling someone a chucklehead, those are tough things, but I get that your intention is pure, and I always welcome you on the show.
I deny everything, Chris. I deny it.
Senator Kennedy, thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.